Colton is with us in Iowa City. Hi, Colton. How are you?
Hey, Dave. I'm well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
Better than I deserve, sir. How can we help?
Good. So my wife and I have been struggling maritally lately. We've been married. It'll be 6 years this August, and the fifth year has just been rough. One of the areas of stress are our finances. We're in need of rebuilding foundations, really. We have a starter emergency fund, about $32,000 in debt, a mortgage, and income that's not always predictable. So I've got some specific questions for you, but first I just want to know, what do you recommend to rebuild financial foundations in our marriage?
Well, I think everybody has to have a voice in the discussion, and sometimes that's what happens. And then the second thing that if everybody has a voice, the voice has to involve that as I use my vote in our marriage, that my vote is not for my selfish need or want. My vote is for the good of the overall family. That's how I'm using my vote. And so it's not like a little child, in other words, stomping their feet with a red face on the cereal aisle demanding Frosted Flakes because I deserve them. And sometimes we get that little kid inside of us making our adult decisions called selfishness, and then it affects our relationships. So couples that can rise up above their own selfish desires for the good of the overall family will ultimately get their own selfish desires, but they also get unity then, and because there's some nobility to that. But the most of the money fights that Sharon and I have had involve selfishness on one of our parts, usually mine. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got a new craving for a new car, and that's been not so good for us. And so I totally get that.
Yeah, so that kind of explains, what's going on with you. That's not a bad thing that you want a new car. The bad thing is if you actually acted on that while you're $32,000 in debt, and your wife's scared to death because she's worried with the erratic income all the time if you're going to have money for electricity. And you come waltzing in with your muddy boots going, I just bought a new car because I'm just the smartest guy on the planet. And she's going to slit your throat. That's what's going to happen, right? So that's what goes down. You just get angry at that stuff. But so you have to say, hey, I'm going to get a new car, but the way I'm going to get it is I'm going to live like no one else so that later I can live like no one else, because I got to clean this $32,000 up for the good of myself and the good of this family before I can even talk about a car.
Yeah, I'm curious, Colton. What's the family household income?
So it is. She brings home probably around $2,800 a month. That's after tax. And then for me, I'm a worship leader at a church as well as a wedding filmmaker. So that is super sporadic. Making $15 an hour. At the church.
So it sounds like about 40
a week, and then
about 40 grand a year.
Yeah.
Household.
Something like
that. Yeah. So I can see.
Depending on how many weddings that we book, because if we book weddings, I can make $40,000 myself with just 15 or so weddings.
So what would a typical case study fight look like in your house? Describe it to me. About money, a money fight.
Yeah. Yeah, a typical fight, I guess, would be I want to do one thing and she wants to do something else with money. So, for example, I want to say invest a little bit of money. She don't want to do that. She wants to be rigid and pay off debt. Or I want to pay off a debt, but she's afraid of not having enough money for next month. And so a lot of it's pretty passive aggressiveness. We're not really vocal at each other like that, but it can lead to some tension.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where if you'll start doing a detailed budget where every dollar of your income for this coming month has a name on paper, has an assignment on paper, and you agree on where it's going to go, and you're applying any extra money you can find into the budget to the baby steps, and both of you are in agreement on that concept, Then what happens is all you're holding each other accountable to is what you agreed to, and that we're sticking to the baby steps. And here's exactly how this will go down. The first month, the first time you do a detailed budget where every dollar has a name, it's going to be a big fight. Get ready. You may need to actually stop midway through working on the budget and have a cooling off period, and both of you go for a walk around the block separately, because it's going to drag up all this stuff. Okay, it's going to drag up all these insecurities. It's going to drag up all these feelings of inadequacy, where maybe I don't feel like I'm making enough money or doing enough. It's gonna drag up little selfish kid that's in the cereal aisle. All this stuff's going to come up. But if you can push all of that down onto that paper and say, the best way for me to have the life I want, which is for my family to succeed, is to follow these steps and have a game plan for the money. The best way for me to have security is to follow these steps. Then you're going to begin to get the emotions under control. The second month, there'll be some rough spots in the discussion. The third time you do the budget, the third month, it'll actually start to work. But I'm going to promise you some pain between now and the third month.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, because I'm not married, but I from a money perspective, Colton, I would suggest to help you kind of ease that pain a little bit, maybe you and your wife talk about what does success look like for us 5-10 years from now. What is our vision? What are we aiming for? Is it to be debt-free? Is it to buy a home? Is it to go on a dream vacation? Is it to build wealth? And then once you all identify that success, that vision, then the budget helps you get to that. Then the budget and we'll be like, all right, is this going to, if me buying a new car, or is me doing this, is that helping us get towards the next 5 to 10 years?
And if you're following the baby steps, you don't have to have a discussion about whether to do investing or to do debt. You have debt. We're working on the debt.
There you go.
So we've both submitted ourselves to this proven plan.
Yep.
And so all I got to do is go, no, it's not what the baby steps are, because we've agreed we were going to do those. Mm-hmm. Oh, I guess, darn it, that's right. So the best way to get to investing is to get out of debt, or the best way to get out of debt is temporarily stop investing. And so there's a reason the baby steps are laid out the way they are, and the reason millions, tens of millions of people have done this now, literally. Yeah. That's not an exaggeration. And so you just say, all right, I'm going to do this plan that has worked for so many others. We are going to do the plan. We're both in agreement that we're going to do this plan. It's not like I'm going to do it and make you do it. Yeah. We're both in agreement. And then when that feeling rises up and she says, hey, I feel insecure, I really want to start investing, the best way for us to get investing is get this debt cleared. Let's keep hammering the debt.
There you go.
Okay. Or, I really want to, or you're thinking, man, I want to get a new car. Well, the best way to do that is get clear of all this stuff and have some wealth. Because, right now you're too broke to be buying a car, And so, you all of a sudden it all starts to become very, very clear. And, some of your vision can be little things. I'll give you an example. When we were broke, I clearly remember Sharon and I arguing about the food budget, how much she was going to spend at the grocery store. And she was mad. I mean,
because she wanted more food.
Because I was not being forthcoming enough on that line item, okay? And she was hot. You know what Sharon looks like? She gets that look, right?
Oh yeah.
Gets that head, gets cocked a little bit, yeah. And so, you can see it coming, right? And she says, someday, sarcastically, like he said, passive aggressive. I just hope we're rich enough that I can just go to the grocery store and just fill up the basket. And I said, you know what? The best way for us to get there is to stick the dadgum budget.
Hey.
And you know what? Today. She will tell you that story today. She remembers that fight, too.
Are you serious?
Because she says, sometimes I just go and fill up the basket even though we don't need food. Just because, by God, I can do it now. Because we paid the price. We lived like no one else. Now I can fill up the basket.
Like no one else.
So maybe your vision is something just like that.
Absolutely.
Because what was that? That was a sign of her insecurity because I had screwed up and lost everything, and she's scared her family's going to be hungry. Yeah. That's what all that meant.
Yeah.
It was passive-aggressive as crud is what it was. This is The Ramsey Show.
Woo.